Your cells are emitting light right now. And I'm not even talking about metaphorically. I'm actually talking literally emitting light. Coherent biophoton light that your body uses to communicate faster than actually nerve signals. So more precise, I would say, than even pharmaceuticals, which is more chemical, and more intelligently than any algorithm out there. The really crazy part to me, and this gets me every time, the research on this has existed for decades. So why does everybody not know about it? Why does this seem fringe? Because honestly, it threatens a $1.48 trillion industry. Welcome to Be the Frequency. I'm Dr. Shalane Carter, and today we're going all in on quantum biology that proves your body was designed to heal itself. This episode I really wanted to create, and it exists because I keep watching these brilliant, educated, smart, intuitive healers and just people that are passionate for wellness. They're passionate for wellness, I think, that doesn't fit inside a industry standard box. They're really shrinking themselves because of the skepticism of their clients. Does this work? This is quote unquote alternative. This is complementary medicine. And in fact, I think that people have forgotten that these practices have been used for centuries. Okay? And it's just something that, again, quote unquote science or the Western world hasn't been able to prove or can't make money off and trademark. And I feel like there's this kind of, again, this delicate dance that these practitioners are doing, whether you're, a naturopath, acupuncturist, and you practice traditional Chinese medicine and you're prescribing herbs and possibly acupuncture, or maybe you're a holistic health practitioner, or maybe you do a lot more lifestyle things. I even see this in the yoga world and wellness and things like that, where people are offering these things and their clients come in thinking it might not work because we've been so indoctrinated and told that the only way to heal, the only way to get better is through chemicals, is through changing and like that biochemical reaction that pharmaceuticals have. And so what's interesting is you even see it, I've even watched it in circles of other practitioners. And I think part of it is that our society now has been so conditioned to needing quote unquote science to back it up. Now, here's what you don't understand, okay, is that I think that ends. I think that ends today. We're already seeing a huge trickle effect. I've recently had a series on TikTok really blow up, and all of the comments that we're talking about the shift and the medical system kind of letting down a large part of the population, and how we're seeing this shift within that realm of like understanding that we are not just chemical, mechanical beings, that you have to take into effect something so much deeper. And when practitioners are in these circles of other people, if they don't have the quote unquote science to back it up, they're not talking about peer reviewed this and peer reviewed that, but they're actually talking about what they're seeing in their practice, and people are doubting them because their own belief system, and then they second guess themselves. And then that trickles into when clients walk in, being able to speak with clear authority on the practice that they do, what they offer, and how it can help people. And honestly, I want to break down some of these barriers today because there is a ton of science here. There is a ton of science. Again, it comes down to, can you make money? Can I trademark this? Can I profit off of this? And I'm not saying holistic practitioners of any kind should charge less. I am not saying that. I am saying the difference is wanting to keep you in a cycle of sickness in order to benefit versus bringing you in to their community, to their clientele, to their patient load, whatever they call it, and providing them the help that they need so that they can graduate them from their practice. And I think that is the biggest difference, is that sick care versus healthcare. In order to do this, and in order to break down some of these barriers, we need to talk, one, about how your body actually communicates. And I kind of touched on this in the beginning, but your body is constantly emitting light. And again, I'm not saying this in like a woo-woo way. Fritz-Albert Popp's research, he's a German biophysicist, and this kind of started right around the early 70s and kind of went through the 2000s. But he really started to study how all living organisms emit this coherent biophotonic light from your DNA. So when people say on the internet, like, we're light beings, they might be saying it in kind of this spiritual, way, but in a very biological way. And this is, again, this is where I feel like I've always been able to see how this world that we live in now that values science blends with the ancient medical practices that honor spirituality. It's like where science and spirituality meet. They've always been the same thing, just speaking about it in a different way, using different language. And fortunately, Eastern medical practices have centuries of experience versus Western medical practices, which is fairly new and literally in its infancy. Okay. So the key distinction here is coherence, coherent light. Think of it kind of like the difference. I'll give you two examples. Coherent light is full spectrum sunlight when you are out in the sun. Okay. Sun on your skin, how your body processes it, versus when you sit inside of even just a window. Because what happens is the light hits it and it scatters. So even though, yes, light is coming in, it has now changed the coherence of the frequencies. So the difference is, it's almost, again, like a light bulb that scatters it wide versus a laser beam that is clear, focused, and direct. So your DNA is coherent light. It is clear, it is direct, and think of it more like tight-knit and kind of funneled. So your healthy cells, which this is a really fascinating, I would love to do a training on this. I've gone through actually 2 classes, but I feel like I need to go a lot deeper, is on dark field microscopy, which is looking at blood underneath a dark field microscope. And you can start to see the way in which blood behaves differently based on the coherence. So your healthy cells emit this coherent light, and diseased cells, or diseased cells, emit a kind of a more chaotic, incoherent light, or a lot less light. And in these dark field microscopes, you can actually see the different types of cells and the way that they're behaving. And I've actually watched a demonstration of somebody who they received hands-on healing, similar to like a Reiki experience, while they had taken their blood. This part was really cool. They took this person's blood, okay, put it underneath the microscope. Now, the blood is separate from the person. The person then, at that time, receives Reiki. Their blood that is over here, that has been separated from their body now for however long it was, behaves as if it is happening in real time and the blood was in their body. Their cells became more coherent. They started to change, and over, I can't remember the duration of time, but the cells, when they showed them again after whatever the time allotment was, the cells showed a lot more coherence, and the light and it kind of looks like a ring of light. I'm trying to describe it to you without having a picture. But the ring of light that was around the cells is kind of what it looks like, was brighter. The cells themselves looked healthier. You can, when you see it, you can always see a cell that you can see like parasites in there. You can see all sorts of different things when you look under a microscope at blood. If you didn't know, if you didn't take science, you've never looked under a microscope, you can. And you can see all these different things, and you can see how changes it by just changing your electromagnetic field, how it can actually change the way that the blood is responding, which is telling me that energetically, when something is changing or shifting, the biology is responding. Okay, so frequency affects biology. Okay, which shouldn't be that crazy to people, because your eyes sense light, which is a frequency. Your ear, right, it sends it through the brain. This is all frequency signaling within the brain. The ear senses sound, frequency, and the nose, smelling is not you smelling molecules. It's actually your nose, your olfactory receptors picking up on vibrations of molecules. Again, another frequency sensor. And then the brain is computing it into what that smells like. Okay. So you have to understand that when there is more coherence, the body operates better. And this comes down to it on a DNA level, not even a cellular level, a DNA level. Your body is communicating literally at the speed of light. And I would even argue, I don't have any science in front of me to back this up, but I would even argue it communicates faster. There's instantaneous. I think, because I've witnessed it, that there can be instantaneous change. So this information transfer, just kind of like we talked about, this isn't a biomechanical model. Okay? When they are doing in this demonstration that I watched, when they're doing hands-on healing, they're not doing anything to the blood that is separate from the body. But the blood is responding as if it's still in the body receiving this healing. Receiving frequency or biofield therapy medicine. So energy is not working on a chemical level. It is working on a field level. And I think this is really important to understand, because then when we're talking about manifestation, when we're talking about changing your frequency, that's why this podcast is called Be the Frequency. You have to change the way that you are being, the way that you are acting, the way that you are thinking, the way that you are perceiving the world, the way that your nervous system is responding to things around you, and it changes you on a cellular level. So how do we become the frequency? This is why I'm having guests and having all these conversations, is that I want to give you touch points of people that are being the change they want to see in the world, or what do they have to do to become that person? If they have something you have, they've done something that you want to do, I want you to feel like now your field has a touch point and makes it more probable for you as well. So when you're doing an energy healing, when I'm doing an energy healing session, a spinal energetic session, like anything where we're working one-on-one or in a group to change your field, this is not something that I'm just like making up. This is not something that I'm just like, pulling shit out of thin air. I am working on biophotonic coherence in your body. I am working on changing the way that the information, because light and frequency is information, right? When you perceive different wavelengths of light, what is it telling you? What is red frequency telling you, right? What is that vibration telling you? What is blue vibration telling you? Your body perceives this color, and it also now has all of these attachments or programs that it runs that are associated with these specific wavelengths. So again, information. So this is not woo-woo. When I talk about, especially, I think I see this a lot. I think because Reiki's been around longer, quote unquote, been around longer. And we're seeing now this crossover, a lot of more somatic processes that involve the body and mind processes or energy processes. And that's kind of, to me, spinal energetics is one of the primary nervous system regulation techniques that I use. And it has this crossover of your field, which is an extension of your body, okay? Your biofield, integrating with physical. So certain points, I use certain points on the body. We're taking cues from different breathing patterns, different movement patterns, noticing how the body kind of shifts and adjusts points of tension in the body. I am not giving you energy per se. I am helping your body be able to find coherence again by encouraging different movement patterns, which, again, when that communication changes, information changes, then your biology can respond differently. It's literally changing your frequency. One of the things that I incorporate into the way that I practice, which is a little bit different, I actually don't know any other practitioners that do it this way. I'm sure there are that do something similar, but I've never met one. So if you are one, I would actually love to have a chat. You can always find me on Instagram or on TikTok. But one of the things that I always implement, and I've seen a huge shift in my clients by supporting them in this way, is I use a lot of homeopathy. So I think something that's unique about homeopathy is people are like, well, there's actually, if you didn't know this about it, homeopathy is when you take a substance And you do 1 part of that substance to 9 parts of whatever liquid you're going to use. We're going to say distilled water. Okay. There's other things that people use, but that's the probably most common. So we're going to use 1 part that to 9 parts water. Whatever the herb is, or the root, or the flower, whatever your medicine is, and then you shake it. It's called successing. So you shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. You shake it for a really long time. And then you take that, now that is a whole, right? So that's 10 parts total. You chop that into 1/10. And then that 1/10 of the mixture, you then dilute again with another 9 parts distilled water. Okay, so a 1:10 ratio, shake it, shake it, shake it. And then you do this depending on, it will say on the, especially if you do pellet form, it will say like 6x, 30x, 100x. This is how many times it was cut. The interesting part about homeopathy is the higher the cut is, right? So if I've cut it 100 times, it's 100x. The higher that it is, so the less ingredients technically there's technically nothing that is traceable from that first herb that you started with. There's nothing that is chemically traceable, but it has imprinted its vital force or life force energy into the water or whatever you've cut it with. So what's happening is technically you're taking nothing, but it is the most potent the more that you've cut it. And I think part of that is, again, this is some of my theory, some theories that I've read from some other people as well. I think the more that we understand about vibration is the more that you're shaking it, the more that you're vibrating. I think that's part of the reason it's so heavily potent, to be honest. It has been vibrated more. The imprint of the substance is more deeply ingrained in the molecules that are left, or the, atoms that are left. So something that I find really fascinating is that when I started to implement homeopathy in support of whatever my clients were working through, it really started to change not only how quickly they resolved certain physical issues, but also emotionally how quickly they processed in session. People that were exhibiting a lot of resistant patterns to processing, they're coming in and the same process shows up over and over, the same point of tension along their spine. Or during the session, they're getting kind of what's quote unquote, it kind of looks like stuck or it feels like stuck. It's like their body can't close this loop. They can't finish this process that they're holding in their nervous system. And what I find is when I started to introduce homeopathy, I started to see a huge shift, and it shifted very quickly. So if we were working on the point on the vertebrae in their back that was associated with the liver, I would start to give them a homeopathic remedy that would help open up their liver meridian. And we would also maybe do an emotional remedy as well, something that coincided with the emotion that they were dealing with. Typically, it's something like, has the underpinning of anger. It kind of depends. Sometimes this is a traumatic response, stuff like that. So that's very individualized. But depending on what they're working through, we would pair these things with the session, and people were starting to process so much quicker. It's like that time where the nervous system needed to kind of catch up and integrate became shorter. And there's just, it's so fascinating to me, homeopathy. There's some work on the coherent domains of water. And this is where kind of clustered water molecules can store and transmit electromagnetic energy. And when I was kind of talking about being like the more that you shake it, the more potent it is. So this is like the mechanism that homeopaths are talking about that I think sometimes you don't have language for, but understanding that these molecules, and we're seeing it now with a lot of the work of Dr. Emoto and I can't remember what his work on water is, but it's basically how water stores emotions. It's become really, really popular. But we're seeing how the changes, again, in words, in sounds, in frequency are changing the structure of water. And being that we are made up of a lot of water, that means that we can find coherence and, again, emit a more clear light on a biophoton level if we are also supporting ourselves with other things, whether that be light, whether that be homeopathy, whether that be sounds, to help our field become more coherent. There's, there is actually a ton of science behind this. And I think that's why it's hard for people to understand that the structure in which medicine has always practiced is starting to change. And that means it changes their belief system around what is possible for their body. Because now we are being shown over and over again that we are not just chemical or biochemical machines. That you can't just give me an active ingredient in a pharmaceutical and one, there's no repercussions, right? This is where side effects come in. And two, that this is actually the most effective and the most gentle and the most harmonious for our bodies. So there was a man, I have some notes I want to read from. There's a man called Luc Montagnier. I think that's how you say it. Anyways, in 2010, he did some research on DNA and how it emits electromagnetic signals. Again, frequency, okay? Fields of frequency. And it was detectable in water, even when the DNA was removed. And so, again, I think that this kind of like rocked the science world, because that means the water is holding the memory of DNA without DNA having to be there. And for so long, we've focused on having to have something tangible. And the imprint of the information is the tangible thing. It's now in the water, but it's almost, I always say it's like imprinting is the best. When I say imprinting, I always think of Twilight. Anybody else? Maybe that's just the millennial in me. You know, when Jacob imprinted on Bella or like the daughter or something like that. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I read the books, but that really stuck with me because clearly, because I think it starts to, when we start to see science like this emerging, we start to realize what we thought was possible. It's even more. There is more out there. And what was so black and white, you're realizing that you're pulling back the curtains and being like, oh shit, it's a lot of gray. Like when I started introducing a lot of this homeopathic remedies, obviously we're doing support and different things like that. If you work with me doing the Quantum 8 method, this is the one-on-one method that I use, that we go through 8 steps. And one of them is physical stuff. If you're having, digestion issues, circulatory issues, parasites, you're having whatever it is that your physical symptoms are, we're working on those things. But we're also working on these other things. We're working on the nervous system. We're working on your meridians. We're working on your emotional state. We're working on your beliefs. We're working on all this back end things as well that is clearly influencing your biology, because you can't have one without the other. So I did an entire podcast on this, but in 1910, Rockefeller funded the Flexner Report, which basically defunded and wiped out. There was over 200 homeopathic schools here in the U.S., and homeopathy was, I don't know if it still is, but it was the preferred form of medicine for the royal family in England. Again, naturopathy, these schools that utilized the wisdom of nature. You see this all the time in traditional Chinese medicine. It's herbs. It's asking about your emotions. It's asking about your environment. You see this in Ayurveda as well. Like all of these practices, there are things that you do all the time. And I think we've had this huge shift of wanting things now and wanting the change to happen so quickly, because our lives move so quickly that we forget that the whole reason that we're probably sick is because of not doing these things in our lives. So pulling back on all these extra shit that you do not need to be doing, that you do not need to be focusing on, that is purely motivated by either capitalistic gains or something like that. If you can pull back and take some of your time back so you have time to actually shift your lifestyle and time to actually take care of yourself, then again, these more subtle medicines that work on the subtle body or your field begin to work more efficiently, because you're not just trying to overpower a symptom. You're trying to encourage the body to finish a healing response. And I think that's why when I started to implement a lot of these homeopathic remedies with my clients, that everything started to shift. It was no longer something where they came back with a lot of the same patterns over and over, or they were more easily able to move and progress within the Quantum 8 method. So sometimes it's kind of like you do one step and then you have to take like a step back, and then you do 2 or 3 steps and then you have to take another step back. It became so much, not to say quicker, but it's like their body became more efficient. So you have to understand that, like, what the Flexner Report did is start to brand all of these modalities as, again, quote unquote, alternative. That is a very strategic move and a very strategic word. When you are using herbs, when you are getting out in the sun, when you are eating whole foods, when you are moving daily, when you are using stuff from the earth, that's not alternative. That is the most primitive and natural form of medicine that there is. So now, because pharmaceuticals is this new like fancy thing in the early 1900s, and homeopathy is over 200 years old, herbal medicine is literally as old as humanity, but because it's this new shiny thing and its promises are to get rid of your symptoms quick, everybody's like, oh, hell yes. And we wonder why we want such quick results. So this skepticism, to kind of circle back when we first talked, this skepticism is because it has been indoctrinated into our society, because we have been, and any alternative, again, quote unquote, alternative practice has been labeled as such as off the cuff. You now have people that are skeptical to do the medicine that is so natural to the body, that creates coherence instead of dissonance. If you think about what pharmaceuticals do, they create separation. They create separation from the signals that your body is sending you. They're either stopping the signals, right? A symptom is a signal. Something's going on. And instead of complete and finishing that cycle and the body building immunity of its own volition, we're going to stop the symptoms, stop the signal. We haven't resolved the problem. It's not resolving on its own. It's not finishing the pattern. That's something that's unique about homeopathy, is usually the medicine exhibits, if given in like regular dosage, it actually exhibits the same symptoms. So like cures like, not opposite. It's trying to finish. I feel like all of my work always comes back to this verbiage: finishing that loop, finishing the loop, letting your body fully process. So like cures like, when you get something like Nux vomica that would induce vomiting, if you're vomiting and you take something that induces vomiting, does seem counterintuitive, but here's what's happening. It's encouraging your body to finish the healing cycle, to move through rather than to stop. And again, I think this is why homeopathy, connection to the nervous system, all of those things are starting to reemerge, because we've realized we've become so distant from our innate intelligence. And the allopathic model says symptoms are the problem, suppress the problem. Whereas the like quantum mechanic or quantum biology or homeopathic model says symptoms are intelligent signaling from a system trying to find coherence again. How can I help it find coherence? Instead of stopping what's happening, how can I allow it to finish? So it also homeopathy operates off of Herring's law of cure. So healing moves faster from the inside out and top down in reverse order of appearance. So again, instead of stopping the symptom like the runny nose or the fever, we're going to push fever out. We're going to push mucus out. That is normal expression. So homeopathy works in the direction that your body is already moving instead of against it. So when the body, even when it comes down to the nervous system, when the body gets stuck in this sympathetic dominance, right? This is like this fight or flight. A lot of women actually do more fawn and freeze response. The biophoton emissions become more chaotic. Okay. So nervous system regulation cannot be separated from healing. It's why it is a key part of my quantum 8 method, because that is one of the first places that the signaling starts, because the nervous system is perceiving what's going on in the field. It's organizing it and running it through the brain and all the systems of the brain. And then the brain, again, and the body are kind of doing this feedback loop. So we're not here to like fight your body. When somebody comes to me and we start to work together, we're not trying to just get rid of the symptoms and fight against it. We are trying to listen to it, because your body is not broken. It is brilliant. We need to understand the language that it's speaking and speak back to it in the language that it understands. And it is not to beat it down. Okay. So in understanding all of this, to put a bow on this a little bit, I want you to understand that it is a huge shift that is happening right now. You are seeing it all over the world, that medicine and the way that we are approaching healing is changing. Again, it's so fascinating to me to see all of the pieces and parcels of my work that I've been doing and kind of these separate things. All of a sudden I was like, why don't these work together? This is the sequence. This is what needs to be done, because when I started to implement them unknowingly in a sequential order, it was working with the coherence of the body. The body began to respond in a much more coherent fashion. And it was okay if we took 3 steps and we took 1 step back, because it wasn't as far, and then the body responded more quickly and started to move again. And so this is not about a this versus that, okay? This is not about even like, if you get anything from this episode, I want you to understand that when you start working with frequency medicine, when you start working with homeopathy, when you start doing nervous system work, because that's frequency medicine, Reiki, or anything like that, that this is an alternative. This is the original medicine. The alternative is the pharmacological approach. Okay. And that when you start to work with a lot of these other things like homeopathy, or again, spinal energetics, or whatever it is, that it is your body's innate intelligence. What's happening is different signaling is coming in so that your body can find more resonance. Because the research has always been there. The research has always been there. In fact, there was a U.S. military-funded study on energy healing for PTSD. 60% of America's top hospitals actually offer Reiki. I don't know if you knew this, but this was done, it was a review in the Annals of Internal Medicine. So this is a medical journal that is really respected, and it's well publicized and used. So they analyzed 23 randomized controlled trials of distant healing. So this is not even in person. This is like via Zoom. Okay. And 50% of them showed statistically significant results. So it's really like the science is already here. This has stopped being alternative a long time ago. It is already starting to shift to mainstream. It is already starting to shift again back to the original method. And I think we're seeing this shift of people wanting to come back to themselves, wanting to come back to something that doesn't feel like force, it feels like flow. And that's kind of what this is. This shift is everything. So if I leave you with nothing else today, I want you to hear this. Practitioners and people who seek out alternative, quote unquote, medicine, you're not practicing fringe medicine. You're practicing the medicine that was here before money got involved. You're here practicing the medicine that quantum biology is now proving, okay, that science is now proving at the subatomic, biophysical, measurable level. Your body is emitting light. You are a light being. You are responding to frequency. Self-healing intelligence. That's your body. And so, and your clients, practitioners, your clients' bodies do this. Even if they're coming to you and they're saying all these things are wrong with them, that is actually intelligent for what they're experiencing. Act like it. Act like their body's intelligent. Act like your body is intelligent. Practitioners, show up like that. Show up with that confidence. Stop talking about it like it's fringe medicine. It's not. It's here. It's now. It's always been here. Okay? This is something that if you're wanting if you're a practitioner and you're like, yes, I want to implement more of this, or I'm having a hard time maybe finding a unique formula or a unique method for me and for my practice, I'm doing all these things, but I need more streamlining, you're going to want to join the path. Okay, that's a membership or a group that I have for people who are in the holistic world. If you are the person who is not a practitioner, but you're like, yes, all of this, I have stuff going on, but I know this to be true, you're going to want to join the Quantum 8 method. I'm also working on something that will be a part of the Quantum 8 method, but it will be a little bit more like a membership type of thing for you guys to experience and you guys to be able to get the healing that you need. So if any of those sound of interest to you and you're like, yes, I am ready, like, let's do this. Okay, let's stop messing around. Let's start looking at your body as the intelligence it is. I want you to find the one that applies for you, whether you are a practitioner or you are just somebody who wants to look at their body in a more whole and holistic way. There's all the links down below for you in the show notes. If you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel so that you can have all of these conversations, all of these chats ready for you every Tuesday when they drop. Okay. You don't want to miss a single one. They're so good. I have a whole lineup coming up that I'm looking at that I'm like so excited about. So until next time, everybody, cheers.